And we're
Well, good
live.
afternoon, everyone. Here we are. It always amazes. It doesn't take much to amaze me, but always that countdown always amazes me. So here we are, as promised, or as we warned everybody. We're inhabiting the airwaves again, and we as advertised. And I think by popular demand, because the popular demand is less of us and more of something else. So uh, we're going to talk about the permanent diaconate in our diocese, but we're not going to do it alone. We're going to bring in some other people to help us. So we have joining us. This is all live. So joining us from Port Hawkesbury, so in St. Joseph's Church in Port Hawkesbury, we have the pastor, Father Conrad Edwards, and Deacon Berkley Guthrow, who work together. There they are. They're just
Hi, guys.
hi there. And in terms of background today, I don't want to offend you, Shawn, because you've got that RCAF flag in the back there. But in terms of background and location, you guys from Port Hawkesbury win the award. So because we see St. Joseph behind you, joining us today live from the Pastoral Center in Sydney, in number 2, Father Bedford Doucette, who is director of the Permanent Diaconate for the Diocese of Antigonish, and of course is no stranger to being in front of the camera because he is also producer of Mass for Shut-ins. So people probably are used to seeing him. So welcome, everyone.
Good to be
Now
here.
you know when they see. Now all the people know when they have a problem with me, who to send the letters to, right? So
Who is, yeah, when people ask that question, who is responsible for this?
yeah,
There we go. It's
now y'all know, right?
Father Bedford. So you can do that. So welcome, everyone. And we did mention in our promo, which I'm sure tens of people have seen, that we in our diocese, the Diocese of Antigonish, the Permanent Diaconate is fairly new, but we just celebrated. It's just a little over 10 years since we had the first group of deacons ordained through the program for the Diocese of Antigonish and in the Diocese of Antigonish. Although we did have at least one other permanent deacon working in the diocese before that. So I'm going to maybe turn it over to Father Bedford for a minute or two, because I know in the program for the formation program for the permanent deacons, you actually do a whole course on the history of the diaconate and the permanent diaconate. We haven't got time for a whole course today, but maybe you want to say a few words about the history of the permanent diaconate, and more particular, the permanent diaconate in our diocese here in the Diocese of Antigonish.
Well, as we hear in Scripture, the apostles didn't have the time to do all the things that were expected of them. So people were having needs, like the widows needed help, orphans needed help, people needed to be fed. And so they decided it's just appropriate to the Holy Spirit and to us to name 7 men who would take over service or ministry to the community, like going outside of the community to those who couldn't be part of it. And so that's really where the diaconate began. Diaconate means servant or service, ministering to others. So the whole church was to be ministering, but these individuals were to show us how to do that, so to speak. And so these people became, and by the way, there are examples of women who served as deacons as well. It's pretty well taken for granted now that we had deaconesses, and they would take care of women, whereas the men deacons would take care of the men. So, for example, a woman deacon would go to a sick widow and help her, that kind of thing. It wouldn't be appropriate for a man to do that. And so these people became very important in the early church, so much so that they got involved in administration, and some of the early popes were chosen from among the deacons. So very early in the church, the hierarchy, the institution was seen as, bishop or overseer, and presbyter, an advisor to the bishop, and then the deacon, who was to be the eyes and ears of the bishop in his ministry of service. And then through the years, they took on importance and began all kinds of services to the community, healthcare and so on and so forth. And then when religious orders started taking over some of these ministries, the diaconate kind of fell on the wayside. It began to be seen simply as a stepping stone to the priesthood. So that was up until about the 6th century. And then from then on in the Western Church kind of went into the background. And I know like Father Duaine and Father Conrad, you were ordained a deacon, but you're transitional, as we call it now, on your way to the priesthood. Whereas the deacons here are ordained to the permanent diaconate. That is their vocation, their calling. And so at the Vatican II, we reinstated the diaconate. Paul VI did that in 72, 74, around there. And then in Canada, the first deacons were ordained, I think, in 74 in Toronto. And then in our own diocese, our first class of deacons were ordained in 2011. So that's 10 years ago, and it's now history.
Well, yeah, thank you very much. And I know that I spent a little time working in Toronto myself, and got to know, and Father Conrad, we were at St. Augustine's. Some of our time overlapped at the seminary, and that's where so we used to see, they would come one weekend a month and stay at the seminary. So we got to know a number of the deacons and their wives as they were preparing for ministry and for ordination. So now,
an interesting phenomenon is that in the United States, there's 19,000 deacons in the U.S.
Wow.
I don't have the exact number in Canada, though, because we didn't have those statistics. At least I didn't find them. But in our own diocese, small as we are, we have 18 deacons. 3 are retired. So we have 15 active deacons in our diocese, which is considered very good, and being much more acceptable in parishes and ministry. They're seen in the community and doing work. And maybe since we got Berkley right here, Deacon Berkley from Port Hawkesbury, he was just named as a representative of the town of Port Hawkesbury in view of the tremendous work he's doing in the community. So people see the deacon, they know what the deacon does. So when the deacon works with all these people on the peripheries and the vulnerable and so on, when they come to the Eucharist and read the prayer of the faithful, they know what they're praying for because they've seen it in the community, that kind of thing. So it's a real phenomenon in the church that has grown so well.
And you heard Berkley in the history there that some of the early popes were deacons. So you keep it up. You've got a shot.
Francis is thinking of retiring, so get ready.
There you go. Don't tie up your phone. Don't change your cell number, whatever you do.
I look
so we're talking about the permanent diaconate, and so far it's been me and Father Bedford. There's been 2 priests that have been talking here. So maybe we should talk to our deacons here, our permanent deacons. So Deacon Shawn, Deacon Berkley would like to take this, but maybe why don't you talk a little bit from your perspective about maybe a little bit about your call to the diaconate and why you felt called to this ministry, and what the preparation was like, what the formation was like for you. And it's very much a family affair because both of you are married and have children, and so don't fight. But
yeah, well, I as producer of this, I have all the power, so I can decide who goes first. Do you want to go first there?
Okay.
Okay.
When it started, it was when we started out, it was very much unknown what we were doing, where we were going, and even when you were in the program, to be truthful, when you started the program, it was like you were just doing maybe going for your master's degree or going for some degree. You were just studying. because it wasn't, although Leo was here and Don, they weren't up in our area. So I had no idea of what a deacon did or what a deacon looked like or was supposed to do or anything. So it was kind of like you went away with the weekends with your wife, and you were studying, and they were telling you, but it didn't really make any real sense, I think, as because it was too abstract as you went. So you went through the program, and people were, particularly around your parish, they knew that I was studying. They didn't know what for, they didn't know what a deacon was either. So I can remember, and during those years, after a weekend, you'd get in the car to drive back, because we were in North Sydney, and I'd tell my wife, this is it. This is not. It's not making sense to me. And she'd calm you down, and off you'd go, and you'd be back next week. But I can remember when the ordination, and that it was a great day. But when they opened the doors to the cathedral and you went in, the hymn was "Here I Am, Lord." But the cathedral was full. But I think the people were there because it was something. They were there to see what this was all about. Who were these people that were going to be ordained? What did they look like? What were they going to do? So you went through that, and then you went out. You were assigned, and I think even in the parishes that we went into, is that the priests weren't really familiar as to what do I do with a deacon. I don't really know, because I don't think maybe the groundwork wasn't laid out as well for us either. That was there. So we went out, and you kind of felt your way with your priest and with the people. And in the beginning, it was kind of like, well, you're a father wannabe, or you're a mini priest, or you're an adult altar boy, and all of that sort of thing. But I think it took over the years, and particularly when Father Conrad came, because he had worked with a deacon before, and he had done some reflection on a deacon. It was very much then we kind of, I think, discovered together, for me, helped you to discover what a deacon is and what a deacon does. And then I think the people have come over the years to kind of understand what we are and what we're not. And I think that has been it. But I think over the last 10 years for the first group, and then there was a group ordained right behind us, is that we've learned together, the priests, the deacons, our families, our parishes, we've learned what a deacon is, and we're still niching our place in the diocese and stuff. At least for me, it was a journey of took quite a few years to discover who I am, as a deacon.
So what was your call though? Kind of come back to the question. What
I think for me, it's always been very much. I came from a family that was involved in community and involved in church, and we went with them. Like when Dad went to volunteer in the church at bingo or church picnics, whatever, he took us along. It wasn't something that Dad went and did. He took us with him. So you witnessed being a volunteer and being of service. Like you went to people's homes, you helped out the neighbor. So it was very much that's what we're called to do. You were living your faith. So it was very natural throughout my life, even in school, volunteering and I coached other kids, and I barely saw my kids play sports because you were taking, helping some with other kids. So, but it was very much that you did what you saw and what you assimilated through your parents and in the community, neighbor helping neighbor. So it's natural. This is a natural calling for me.
That's very good. And I'm going to pick on the director here, whoever you are there, Shawn, because I think maybe can you talk about a little bit your experience too of the whole formation program, because it's a big commitment, and what that was like for you and for Barb, your wife, and for your whole family.
Sure. I think, I'll say a very public thank you to Deacon Berkley and the rest of his cohort that paved a lot of that road for us. Because when I came into the formation program, it was much more formalized than I think it was then. We had 4 years of study. It very much was like doing a 4-year diploma or degree program. It was very structured. It was very organized. Even if we weren't sure what was going on, there's two things we heard a lot: trust the process and nip it in the bud, right? Like we heard those two things constantly, and I mean that kind of, in a lot of ways, that parallels any faith journey, right? Like, there's this element of I'm not really sure where I am, I'm not really sure where I'm going, but I have faith that those two things will align. But I think one of the things that people on the outside don't see as much as maybe they should be aware of is that this is a huge commitment for our spouses also. They were there every weekend with us. They traveled back and forth. They sat in on the most of the classes, unless it was very specific to the diaconate itself. They were in on the classes, and if not, then if we were in something that was very unique to just us, they were off learning something else. So they very much got a 4-year education also, and there's a huge commitment to that. I could not do this role, not even close, without the full support and love of my wife. It just could not happen. So if anybody's watching this and they're um, thinking about the diaconate, have a good, long, open conversation with your wife, because she's going to be part of it. She won't be ordained. That might be a discussion for another day. But she is very much involved in the whole process. So I mean, we started right at the beginning of our formation, and we started with very fundamental, like where Catholicism is, what it is, what it means, and we got courses on scripture, courses on canon law. I mean, just virtually everything you could imagine across those 4 years. So we really benefited from those who had gone before. The other way, personally, I had benefited from those that had gone before, is that I came to a parish that had already had a deacon that had been here for a number of years. And I was partnered with a priest who had had a deacon before. Not only that, he was part of our formation process. So the transition for me was into an environment that already knew what the role of deacon. So I didn't face any of those things that Deacon Berkley had mentioned about, well, what exactly is he, right? They knew when I got there, which was very beneficial for me. As far as the calling, again, mine's fairly similar to Berkley's too, is that so many people, I have friends outside the Catholic faith, especially some of the evangelical or friends that I have that all have this come to Christ moment. They know exactly when it happened, right? And I like, I call it the St. Paul moment, right? Like, I don't have one of those. Like, I don't have that moment where I was knocked off the donkey and it went from nothing to something. It had always been my mom and dad, regular churchgoers, still are, and instilled that idea of service in me. And it's funny because sometimes you see clearer who you are and where you're going looking back than you ever did when you were there. And as I look back over the jobs I've had over the years, I was a lifeguard. Then I was a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, hence the flag behind me. And now I'm in these roles of service. And so it it more or less felt as a natural progression. Now there's other, I mean, certainly there's other elements to it that are probably a little too personal to go into here, but it very much was that. It was a slow build, not a, like, I mean, if you're sitting out there saying, well, I'm just waiting for that bolt of lightning, it may not come, because it certainly, there was never a bolt of lightning in my life when it came to this stuff. It was
Okay.
very much a slow, steady process.
Yeah, and you gave a good segue there because you
Well,
talked
we
about,
worked on it all week.
so being in a parish and working with the pastor, whoever that is. But I said, Father Conrad is, you've been in two different parishes where there has been, where you've worked with a permanent deacon, and maybe you could say a few words about that. Your experience as a pastor and in collaborative ministry with a permanent deacon.
Sure. About, this is what, 22, so 2011, I think. When were you guys ordained? 2011. 2011, so in the fall that year. So that winter I was asked if I would kind of be a priest mentor to one of the candidates. And I said yes, because it seemed like a good thing to do. But even though, as Father Duaine said, being in the seminary and encountering these folks that were doing the journey for the permanent diaconate, never really was close to it. I didn't really have any direct experience of it. So for my own interest and sake, if I'm going to be a mentor to somebody, I better learn what this is about for myself and for him. And the more I read and the more I kind of discovered it, there's really something very powerful about this, that somehow the church deems that service is so important, and it's important for all of us to be doing this, as both Shawn and Berkley have pointed out. That's a lifestyle. So diaconal ministry happens, it's a call for everyone. But that the church views that service so integrally to the mission of the church that it creates an order to make that happen, was something that I hadn't really thought of before. So kind of welcomed the guy as he did his journey and into ordination. Then I had a year with him, and it was a different experience because he was still working, so our relationship was a bit different. We didn't see one another all that much, kind of on the weekends, and he had his own kind of service ministry, which was very good. But then when I came to Port Hawkesbury, it was a very different relationship. Berkley had just retired from teaching, so not to say I had friends I hadn't used yet, but it was kind of getting to be that way. And we were a bit. We kind of did the dance. We were kind of like wrestlers for a little bit, trying to figure out, okay, who does what? What's the story here? Who's like what? But we had this kind of discussion, and I think one day we kind of said, well, what is it you want me to do? And I said, you're ordained. I need you to do what you're ordained to do. And we kind of took it from there. And I think maybe the other thing that's perhaps, although at St. Anne's would have started, with the deacon way back, it was also the journey with the parish, because people have their idea that somehow, particularly in liturgical ministry, some folks can see that the deacon is taking their ministry, when in fact many of these ministries have existed in the absence of a deacon. And once we understand that the liturgical ministry is not separate from the service ministry, that everything that the deacon does is reflective of that ministry in the community, then people kind of cotton on to that. But if it's only seen as a liturgical ministry, then it really misses the point. We've done a kind of a journey. We spend a lot of time together, just by virtue of the fact of his working life, having retired. And personally, I've just enjoyed having a real colleague in ministry. I mean, Berkley pretty much knows everything but the People's Confessions. I mean, we talk and we go to meetings together, and he'll kick me under the table if I'm saying something that's just off base, and we'll have good kind of discussions about it, and just to have value that opinion through COVID would not have survived without our capacity to be together during the days of shutdown. Berkley and Jesse and I gathered every morning, distanced, even the three of us, but we gathered for Eucharist every morning. And it was good just to touch base and to say, how do we continue to minister to our people through there? And having a deacon as part of that to do the ministry, I think it would have been a much different road.
Well, I have to say, I have to echo a lot of that. Now, I was very fortunate coming here at the St. Anne's that, as you say, a lot of the work with the parish had already been done. So the late great Father Leo Boone and Deacon Lauren McNeil were here, and they worked very much together as a team. And I think that a lot of the growing pains had already happened before I got here. And the proof of that to me was Deacon Lauren moved to another parish assignment, and Deacon Shawn was being ordained. And this was the first thing that people started to ask me when they found out that Deacon Lauren was moving to another parish. They started asking me, "Are we going to get a deacon here in this parish?" So that to me was confirmation of the fact that this ministry now was being integrated into the parish and being very much appreciated. And then Deacon Shawn came. Where are you, Shawn?
I'm right here. I didn't go
yeah,
anywhere.
okay, there you are. And it's the same kind of thing. I think just as Father Conrad said, we kind of had to do the dance, right? To get to know one another. And I will definitely echo what you said. To have a colleague in ministry, because before I came here, this is my first experience as pastor, to have a colleague in ministry who is also ordained. Now, there are lots of colleagues in ministry. There are lots of people, pastoral teams, and that's all very important. But it's true, and the fact that we're able to, I think we play off one another very well, and that we're able to have that kind of relationship in ministry to to bounce ideas and to talk, and our meetings are very important. What's that?
Good and bad ideas.
Oh yeah, well that's right, exactly. That's why our ideas constantly have to be vetted. But anyway, and that's it's all very good. I very much echo what you said about the whole experience with COVID and the lockdowns. Like a very, very similar experience. We would celebrate. We'd have to distance, but we'd celebrate Eucharist together. We couldn't have people in the church, and like everything else, as our late great parish council chair said at the very beginning of the whole COVID lockdown, it's an ill wind that doesn't blow somebody some good. You moved to distance education, Shawn, in your working life, and moved into moved into your office in the church, and so it was very easy for us to celebrate Eucharist together and that kind of thing. So.
And I mean, that brings up something I wanted to discuss there for a second, that Berkley had mentioned, that he's retired now. Well, I'm not. Like some of the deacons that you will encounter have regular day jobs, and we're out in community working. And I've been very blessed. I work at the Nova Scotia Community College. I teach here, and one of the byproducts of that is that as the year goes on, students, I mean, especially in the IT in the IT world. They will Google you. So, and so one of the things they find out rather quickly is that I'm a deacon. And invariably, by October, November, I have students coming to me and from outside my program, because word spreads rather quickly, students that are struggling with something outside of what I mean, outside of academics, right? So they will come in here and they'll want to talk, right? And the fact that I'm in community, right? And NSCC, of course, doesn't have a pastoral office or anything here, but I've made it very clear to the student services down there that if somebody comes in the student services and they need some spiritual help and you want to send them up to see me or tell them to get a hold of me and make an appointment, and that's kind of added to this here, right? So I think wherever deacons are there, right? Like this is not something that I do on Saturday and Sunday, right?
I think,
You're
Shawn,
a deacon regardless of where you are.
You've hit a real thing. So I think, Berkley, you've had a lot of those experiences, right? People that you've known growing up or that you're teaching, but now they know you, but I don't know if you want to say something about that, about their changing perception or that.
Yeah, it's the view that they have of you is that, you know, this is my parish, but you get drawn into other parishes. People will come and I journeyed with a gentleman that I knew just in passing from a neighboring parish, but I journeyed with him for about 10 weeks. And it was very surprising, you know, that out of the blue you get this call and you journey with someone in a different way. Yes, we had a connection in a sense, but yet this connection was now very much as he approached the end of his life, and you journeyed with him like that. So it has you're perceived differently.
Okay, we have a question online, and it is for our esteemed guest, Father Bedford. And it says, Father Bedford, if you, and I'll apologize to the person who asked the question, because if I attempted to say your name, I would only butcher it beyond recognition. So I will apologize ahead of hand. It is a wonderful Gaelic name. So I will, and being, I mean, being proud Irish, you would think I would be able to attempt this, but I won't. But the question is, Father Bedford, if you haven't already, could you share a little bit about the recent developments in the Atlantic provinces with regard to the Permanent Diaconate and that path forward?
Oh, yes. I'd like to start off by reaffirming that the role of the deacon, his ministry, is, as we say, altar, word, and charity. And when a bishop appoints a deacon, there's two appointments in that letter. One is to a parish base, a liturgical base, and the other one is to a ministry outside of or an extension of that liturgical base. So it's very important to realize that there are two appointments when a bishop does that. Now, another thing I want to say first is that I lied to you before. I said we had 18 deacons in our diocese. We really have 19 because we just ordained Dr. Michael McCarville on May the 29th. So I forgot that we had a new deacon in our midst. So that having been said, the Diocese of Halifax, Yarmouth, and Antigonish are working on a program together so that we can use Zoom and other resources to combine a formation program. We'll have a group in Sydney, let's say, at the Pastoral Center for a weekend. Halifax, Yarmouth will have a group there. We'll use Zoom and other things so that we can put on a program. No one diocese has all the resources to do that. But when you get 2 and 3 dioceses together, you have a lot more resources. And Deacon Berkley and I are on that committee with Deacon Robert Doyle and Father Michael Grace in Halifax. And we're coming up with what I think is a real good program. It's a 4-year program preceded by a year of discernment. And that begins for us in September of this year. And today, as a matter of fact, I'm sending out an email to our 5 interested people. We're going to begin our program on August the 28th and get them underway. And at the end of that year of discernment, they'll decide whether they want to apply or not. So, but the program will involve 30 weekends a year, preceded by a gathering of Atlantic Canadian candidates, and ended with a retreat, all of us together. So, and that will be a 4-year program. We'll cover all the courses. But something more than just courses is the fact that we are in a program of discernment, a program of formation, and that we are learning to form a community and to get that sense of we're in this together and we share the order of deacons. And, you know, when I was first appointed to the as director of the diaconate in the diocese, some guys said, you know, who is he coming in, a priest, you know? Well, what they forgot was that I'm a deacon too. So I too, in a way, belong to that order of deacons. And so there was a nice rapport between us. But these are all some of the things around this Atlantic Formation Program. I know in our diocese we have 5 interested. I think there's 3 in Halifax. And the program is set up in such a way that any diocese of Atlantic Canada can you know, climb aboard at any point when they're able to do so. Deacon Berkley, you're on the committee as well. Maybe you could add something that I might have forgotten to explain.
I think it's very much is that it's that discernment journey. It's not again the concept of studying. The courses are there to help you, to enrich you, to you know, to help you when you become a deacon. But it's very much in that discernment for both the husband and the wife. So at any time, you know, it's just as important to say, this is not my calling. My calling is here. So it's very much that discernment process. It's very much that you know, finding, am I called? Am I being called to serve in this particular way?
If you're looking back at your younger discerning self, what questions do you wish had gotten asked? What would be helpful for your own discernment? I don't know, maybe I'm putting you on the spot there.
I think it's very much in going and allowing yourself to be aware that I'm being called to this, that I am worthy to be called to this. I think we can look at ourselves and say, look at our past and say, well, this maybe, you know, this is not for me, but it's for that person over there. So I think into it is that you can go and you really have to be vulnerable. And you work with your spiritual director, you work with your fellow deacon candidates, you know, with the director and so on. But it can be very much that we can look at a person and say, oh, well, that person's, oh, well, there's a good example of a deacon. But that person could really still be struggling with, you know, from things of the past. It could be just something there, but it's to allow yourself that I am worthy to be called, and then you just then go from there.
And then ultimately it's God's call.
God's call, right?
Well, that's this is very good. Now we're coming up. We're coming up on about 40 minutes here, and you know, we don't want to.
Normally, I'm very 30-minute mark. I'm like, because I realize people don't. But
that's testimony to the quality. That's testimony to the quality of guests we have with us today. So
well, exactly. And that's what I was going to say.
It might be good to let people know that if they want more information on the diaconate, we have a web page, the Diocese of Antigonish, and on that site is a web page for the diaconate. And we have some good information on there too. And of course, you can always talk to a deacon or to myself for further information.
And I think Berkley, I'm going to speak for you, and I'm going to speak for the rest of my brother deacons. We would love to have that conversation with you. I don't think I think I know all the deacons in the diocese well enough to know that if you wanted to have that conversation with any of them, they would love to sit down and have that conversation with you. So don't be shy. Don't think you're going to don't think you're going to bother us or any of that. We would absolutely love to have that conversation with you.
And it doesn't necessarily mean, oh, I want to be a deacon. I just want to know more about the diaconate.
Absolutely.
That's right. Yeah. Well, thank you all very much, and thank you to everyone that's with us again. Maybe we're responding to popular demand, which is that there's less of us.
We shut up.
Exactly, and so that was very good. And I want to say a very, very special thank you to the person who sent us a question, so that we know there was at least one person watching while we were.
Every person
here,
online asked a question.
Yeah. So this will be going up on our well, Shawn, you that's your part.
Yes,
Explain the technical stuff.
For those of you that have watched this live, thank you. But if you do want to share this with somebody else, this will be on the Diocese of Antigonish. It's on the Parish of St. Anne's YouTube channel, and it is on the Parish of St. Anne's Facebook page. The link will be available. Feel free to share it. If you want to share it with friends, you can just go to the channel and copy the link. And I think we're going to.
Shawn, don't interrupt you. Maybe you could send me the link, and I can post it on our site as well. So
absolutely, absolutely. I will share share the link. We will share it around to different places. The other thing is, I think Father Bedford and I talked about adding it to the diocesan website, the Deacon's page there. So we will talk to the good folks there and see if we can't get that added. And I don't think that's going to be a problem. I kind of have an in with the webmaster. For those of you that I am actually the webmaster, so if I can't make this happen, we're in trouble.
So, well, thank you very much for joining us. Wonderful to see you, even virtually. So that's good, and we've all gotten very used to these kind of things in the last few years. So, thank you to everyone, either for joining us live or if you're watching this. I always say on tape, and Shawn laughs at me, but if you're watching the digital or recorded version or whatever it is. Anyway, that's great, and so I don't know if this is a promise or a threat, but we'll be back soon. So thanks everyone, and God bless you all.
If there's anything you'd like us to talk about, please reach out to us, because that way we'll have somebody to blame if it goes sideways. No, again, we love doing that. I'm going to, in the chat window here, I'm going to share the link to the diaconate program from the diocese page. So if you are watching now, now I'm not really sure how that will work with the I think it'll come up on both the Facebook and YouTube channels. So the link should be there. If you go to either one of those sites, the link to the Permanent Diaconate page should be there. So again, everybody that tuned in, thank you so much. Thank you, Father Bedford.
Thank you.
Father Conrad and Deacon Berkley. Thank you so much for being willing participants in this. And maybe we can do it again sometime. If there's anything you folks want to talk about, Father Bedford or Deacon, Father Conrad or Deacon Berkley, if there's something you want to come on and talk about us, listen, the less we got to say, the better it is for everybody, right? So everybody tune in. Thank you very much. God bless you all. And as he already warned you, we will see you soon.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.